And still on the mic, broadcasting through the night, talking F1, getting every fact kind of right. From the grid to the finish, they're all in. Top Step Podcast, let the race begin.
Welcome to the 8th episode of The Top Step with Stu and
Reese.
We are here for another week following a Formula One race that was infinitely more exciting than the week prior to that, so we've got plenty to talk about tonight. It's been a busy week, mate. How are you doing?
I am
Absolutely.
better now. Very well. How about yourself?
Absolutely exhausted, but happy to be here. Happy to spend the next 50 or so minutes talking to you about all things Formula One after what was a relatively more exciting weekend than we had in Japan.
Big time. Much more excited.
So we got a pretty easygoing show tonight. We haven't had a lot of time to put in the usual 100, maybe 200 hours of solid journalistic research that we do prior to these episodes so we can get almost everything right. But obviously, from the top of the show, we're going to have a quick look at what happened in quali and the race, and then have a quick chat about Red Bull and how the wheels there aren't falling off when they actually want them to. A little bit of a driver of the day review, as that continues to be an absolute joke. The Doohan files, so duly named now, and then some silly season stuff. A little bit of Mike crack, and then we'll have a look at the standings after Bahrain and do a preview of Jeddah, which is coming up this weekend or Monday morning for us, which is actually good because we are all on holiday.
Yes.
So that's a rundown for the show.
Fire up the Starlink, mate. Get into it.
Absolutely. Starlink will be fired up, Spit will be on, fire will be burning, and I will be comfortably asleep in a chair beside the fire. So can't wait for that one. But let's get straight into it. As always, if you are listening, watching, wherever it is, we love the feedback we're getting. We've had some people correct us. Funny enough, no one at all from any, dare we say, professional journalistic sports covering outfit resembling an animal has contacted us to say anything about the segment in last week's show.
Pretty disappointing actually.
But are enjoying the feedback from the millions and millions of you out there who join us on the weekly to hear us rant about Formula One. Let's get into it, mate. Qualifying again continues probably to be the most exciting part of the Formula One weekend.
Yes, absolutely.
What tickled your pickle?
Everything. It was
everything.
It was a really good qualifying. In terms of the late racing, the late results. There's a little bit of controversy with some lap times that should have been deleted earlier than what it was, and seeing the result, obviously, with Oscar taking out pole was phenomenal. And I do think that someone from a very high prestigious Formula One podcast did call that.
Yeah, look, flying back to back here, basically I'm a bookie in my spare time. Let's touch quickly on that thing that you mentioned, and it happened to your man as well in qualifying. There was a DN. Wow, it's not a DNF, is it? It's a
lap time deletion.
Lap time deletion done after 45 minutes
it was
after
a big time
qualifying took place.
And now I just cut you in there. What I don't understand is their job is kind of to monitor those things, and during qualifying, during the race, they don't do an awful lot in that time frame other than making sure that everyone's staying within track limits and that sort of stuff. They've got detections and they've got those sort of stuff. So for something like that to take 45 minutes to decide was ridiculous.
Yeah, so we need to give a little bit more context here, because I guarantee you the people who queue into this establishment to watch the show who may not have seen what we're talking about, which is that Nico Hülkenberg had his lap deleted 45 minutes post-race. And the outcome of it was that Alexander Albon missed out on being able to participate in Q2 and then obviously Q3 potentially with Carlos Sainz making it into Q3. So a big penalty for him, and to be fair, a disproportionate penalty for Hulkenberg. So terrible stuff from the FIA, given exactly what you just said about all of the systems and stuff they've got in place.
Yeah, and I mean we'll touch on this a little bit later on in the podcast, but looking at what's happened to Hulkenberg in the race as well, and seeing the pace that we know that Alex has in the Williams, it was pretty upsetting. Coming from a Hulkenberg fan, like as you said, he's my man, but that shouldn't have happened, and there's no penalty for that for obviously the Hulk, because it wasn't his fault that it took 45 minutes to get the lap deletion or to go off like that. So yeah, just don't be sorry, FIA, just do better.
Yeah, particularly all the other systems they've got. So, look, that was certainly a disappointment. The good thing was that we managed to get a pretty solid run right through qualifying this time without the red flags and other things.
There was no grass catching on fire this week, which is a really, really big help.
Absolutely a massive uptick for them. Jack Doohan just missing out on getting into Q3. Pierre Gasly doing a surprising job and getting as high as P3, I think, throughout qualifying, and then ultimately in P5.
I think Doohan was P11. I think that was a very good result considering, and very good signs of growth in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a positive for him. And I think only about half a second or so behind Pierre Gasly, which is within that threshold that he was set. So, look, a good result from him. Isaac Hadjar struggled all weekend and struggled through qualifying. That's his worst effort so far, which is, really an impressive thing to say that so far his worst effort is Q2. So he did a great job again in difficult circumstances for the entire Red Bull outfit, both Racing Bull, Red Bull, the whole outfit over the weekend. He did a great job.
Yeah, you look at Yuki in 10th and Hadjar in 12th, comparatively, if we're talking 2 years ago and we're looking at, is it AlphaTauri versus Red Bull 2 years ago, if someone was, 2 spots behind, that's a very, very good effort. So, no, hats off to Hadjar there, especially when your teammate's starting in 17th. It's a very good, being a rookie and holding his own, and holding the team at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but really, look, up the top, not too many surprises other than the two glaringly obvious ones, which is that Lando Norris P6 and Max Verstappen P7. The Red Bull just not doing all the stoppy things that it was supposed to be doing according to Max.
The craziest thing in that whole scenario is that an Alpine started ahead of a Red Bull and a McLaren, which is just crazy, especially given the circumstances. Obviously, with Red Bull's a little bit different, having some car issues, but seeing the McLaren, obviously when one of them's starting on pole and the second one's behind an Alpine, there's definitely some things going on, or some things didn't go on in quali that he was hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. George just managed to make his way into P2. He continues to do remarkably quiet things and achieve. And Charles Leclerc, of course, taking out P3. Kimi Antonelli, strongest of the rookies yet again in P4. And that's becoming a situation that is not surprising, which, again, makes us continue to eat our words about how we might have thought the transition would go for him.
And it's simply because he listened to the first podcast and he went, screw you, I'm actually going to do really well. And so I'm just going to start taking some credit for that, because he's just using that as fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing quite well in the process. The last thing, again, a little bit of status quo, Lance Stroll qualifying in 19th, and we'll have a chat about him in the drivers' silly stuff that comes up. So we head into the race. And Detective Verstappen on the scene immediately upon the race taking place. He managed to spot, and I know people probably think that he's a dobber or whatever, but I love the fact that he has the mental space to pick out breaches of the rules while he's flying around the track. And it was an obvious one. It was in his eye line.
We'll take you back. And now I'm not going to quote exact track or year, but I do believe this was last year. Max did it, and so did Fernando Alonso. The only two drivers that I've seen do this. See something on the TV coverage on the side of a track going 300 kilometers an hour and asking their team, is that driver okay? Because they've seen a crash on the other side of the track because they've seen it on the screen. Now, it's pretty crazy taking that sort of information in. And I did see Max cop a lot of slack, saying he was a dobber in and things like that. But if Max hadn't done it, George would have. And if Max does anything wrong, he has half the field saying Max did this, Max did that. So I'm there. I'm 100% there to say call it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So he managed to do that, which obviously meant a 5-second penalty for Norris. And given that he finished second only by 1.5 seconds behind George, or a second behind George, it really cost him his top two finish. But he did a tremendous job, I think, during the catch-up phase of the race for him when he pitted, took the 5-second penalty, and then ended up basically making up the gap. So he did a really good job. We've been pretty fast on the show to critique Norris the other way, but he actually drove reasonably well given the circumstances. I think probably last year he might have struggled to get focused.
Yeah, big time.
And stay focused.
Yeah, we've seen little things happen to him in previous races, little things happen to him that sort of derail his entire race. So absolutely. I'm enjoying watching Lando race. I'm just not enjoying Lando outside of the car.
Yeah, he needs to. He does need to just quiet down a little bit with the commentary on stuff. Like you can see Max. It's going to sound bad to say, but you can see that he's in awe of Max. You can see it in the cool down room. You can see it in press conferences. He's that mate of the lead jock that laughs at everything.
Yeah, and
he really needs to get away from that. It's hard to watch. And it means that Max knows that he's still got a mental edge over him. But I think Lando drove particularly well this weekend. I know he doesn't. I know coming out and saying that what he was trying to say, which was if Max drove our car, I think he would be disappointed in himself, which came out as if Max drove our car, he'd get out of it disappointed. I think they're the things that he needs to abandon for the minute and just focus on the driving, which is what Oscar's doing. And
and this is exactly what you're saying. This is where Lando still lost me. So you're telling me that the two leading cars in the championship, both McLaren, that Max will be disappointed driving that car. Like it makes zero sense. If they were talking about the McLaren 3 years ago, cool, we get it. But you are talking about the fastest car on the circuit at the moment, fastest car, in there. And the most talented driver, I'd say, on the field at the moment, on the track at the moment, is Max. So you're telling me that Max in the fastest car is going to be disappointed, and it's just not going to be that way.
No, it's not. So, as I said, all of that aside, I think he had a really good weekend, given where he was clearly at mentally as well, and drove well. Leclerc 4th, Hamilton 5th. People should start to get worried about Lewis. In my opinion, we're 5 races in.
Yep.
And he's still struggling with that car, and he managed to move from 9th to 5th on the grid in a team that set the fastest pit stop of the year so far. I think they did 2.1 seconds for their pit stop in a car that probably isn't quite there yet. And he's battling away. You could see as well in the language that he was using with the team communicating on the radio
learning
100%, much more calm.
Yep.
Communication had improved. So I think people should be concerned when upgrades come through about Ferrari maybe being a little bit stronger than everyone's saying at the moment.
I think they might do a McLaren. I think they might do what McLaren did last season, to be fair. And I think in the same sense of Lando was there and he knows how the team works and everything like that, but we had Piastri that was still learning and everything like that. He was still learning how to tell the team what he needed out of the car and what he wanted out of the car and things like that. Hamilton was he had the same family for 8 years?
Yep.
So
10?
Was it 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a decade.
The same person, like work with Bono, working with Toto, like working with the same team who he grew with and learnt with and everything like that. So they did that together, and now he's gone to complete, whilst it's still in the same race, it's gone to a completely different way, different language, different world. So you're definitely there. Watching him thank the team and speak to the team calmly, and hearing him talk to his engineer, it's 100%. I think they're going to pull a McLaren, and they might come back with the upgrades and be right up there with the title fight.
That's why they're paying him the bill.
Yeah, well,
that's why they're paying him. Max Verstappen getting into 6th with a last lap pass on Pierre Gasly. A lot of people probably missed that, but he managed to haul that thing up into 6th. And obviously, we'll have a little bit of a chat about that after this bit, so we won't go into too much detail there. Gasly, 7th, probably a fair result for him for the weekend. Drove well. Obviously, I'm a massive critic of his. But probably the track obviously suited the car, because even Jack, albeit finishing 14th after the DQ, he had pace for most of the weekend. I think he really struggled with the early stop on lap 9, and that really hurt his late race.
Getting the tyres right, where it was something that the teams just no one got right. Even Ferrari at the end, seeing that the hard tyre was crap, still put their team onto hard tyres. So no one was getting that tyre combo right. People were starting on mediums and softs and going in early and coming in late, and no one sort of had the tyre grip and the temperature worked out.
And surely that's a conversation that the FIA need to be having with Pirelli. I mean, there's like 57 different tyre colours that they've got to work with each weekend, and then they pick 4 of them. And Max ran the hard tyre for the first time at the first stop during the race, and it was junk.
Yeah,
everyone started on the medium, and then went.
We had Lewis.
There's a few on the soft, but generally everyone started on the soft tyre, or they're all on the same compound. Yep. And the tyre offered nothing. There was no variation in strategy. The only variation in strategy is how early they said the tyre was rubbish.
Yeah. And they've changed the compound again this year, and they continue to do this, but they continue to go backwards. Like,
it's time for Bridgestone to make a comeback, I think.
I 100% agree with you there.
It's actually time for them to introduce multiple tyre suppliers, but they'll never do that again because it's way too expensive for the sport. But that is the pinnacle where we've got different cars and different compounds, and then we go to the United States and most of them don't start on the grid, and then we get awesome race results like happened back in the 90s. No, but seriously, they've got to sort the tyres out, because, I mean, it's not okay to have that many different tyre offerings and have none of them actually be that effective at the track. So I know it's difficult circumstances, it's hot and all that sort of stuff, but that didn't just happen. It's always been hot in the desert.
Yeah, no, funny that in the desert, it's kind of why they race at night.
That was one of those bits of Ferrari wisdom. When the sun is out, it is hot.
Yeah, when there's nothing but sand around you and the sun is out, it is hot.
Sonoda finishing in 9th, first time for the double Red Bull points for quite some time. I don't actually know when. I know what happened at the next round last year, but I don't know when that was. So, what do you... Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll just quickly finish through the results. Bierman 10th, fantastic drive from him. Antonelli ended up finishing 11th, which is a little disappointing for him. He was stronger than that, I think. Alex Albon in 12th. Hadjar managed to resurrect something out of the weekend, finishing 13th with Doohan in 14th. Alonso 15th. It's scary to say that's his highest finish of the year so far. Lawson in 16th. That's equally his highest finish of the year. Stroll in 17th. He's still...
Stroll doing Stroll things.
Struggling. Bortoletto in 18th. And the commentators curse because they said that this will be the first race where we've had no retirements, and then Carlos Sainz decided to get a huge hole in the side of the driver's side. Wow, the right-hand side radiator pod. You can see how tired I am because the driver's side is both. Because anyway, and then Nico Hulkenberg getting a DSQ. Now we had some feedback on this. I vehemently defended the fact that the skid blocks last week were for show only, because that's what the commentators said during the race. And one of our big supporters of the show pointed out to us that they are there to set the deck height for the floor of the car, which is ultimately what Nico Hulkenberg got queued for.
No.
Was having too thin a floor at the end. So thank you for pointing that out, Jamie. We love you. We appreciate you. But, we do not make a claim to get everything correct on this show. So moving on from that, I'm going to flip things around a little bit because it makes more sense now to talk about the driver of the day, and also our votes is a new thing we're going to start talking about, or our driver ratings for the race. So official driver of the race was
Lewis Hamilton.
9th to 5th in a car he's unfamiliar with. It's not a bad case if you're going to make the case, but I think there is one driver.
It's not quite as bad as Yuki Tsunoda taking driver of the day.
Nowhere near that bad.
Nowhere near that bad. But we are talking about 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton driving a Ferrari, which is one of the largest teams in Formula One, making up four places, was it?
Ferrari, 9th to 5th.
And not talking about the rookie driver in the smallest team in the Formula One grid, making up 10 places.
In a Ferrari-engined car. Ferrari-engined Toyota, nonetheless.
That good Ferrari Toyota. That's, yeah.
Yeah, look, Ollie Beerman, I think, probably should have been driver of the round. I don't know why in the Middle East, where all that driver of the day vote came from, or if it's just a Sky Sports thing, maybe, I don't know.
But it absolutely is. So you can vote from anywhere. It's not
except Australia.
Except for Australia, sorry. Yep.
And New Zealand.
Anywhere with Sky Sports, I think you can vote. However, I guess the fan base for Hamilton is still larger. Like, he's got to be one of the favourite, or has the most fan base on the grid. So I guess that's where that sort of thing helps, when it is a completely fan operated system.
Yep.
But it would have been nice, I think, to throw some love Beerman's way. I know his dad did, which was amazing to see.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, which is really, really cool.
Comment of the day.
Yeah.
Was him jumping on the radio and congratulating his son. That was absolutely fantastic. So let's quickly run through the teams in no particular order. Rating out of 0 to 10, Max Verstappen.
We're talking about just driver, yeah? That's just based on driver?
Yeah, just based on the driver. Like, how did he perform?
Oh, for the race? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, probably an 8.
An 8? Jesus, that's generous.
Yeah.
Yuki Tsunoda?
Oh, I've really tipped my scales.
You've set the scene here by giving Max an 8.
Yeah, no, I really have. 7.
I think I might say that you done fucked up, Ron.
I did, big time.
Yeah, because for me, I reckon Yuki had a better drive than Max. To be fair,
my brain went to overall drive, and then it was the race, and then it just 2 words collided in my brain, and that didn't work anymore. So yes,
Lando.
Oh yeah, so this is hard because I did stuff up with Max. Can we
just
that?
You just got to drop a number. Just drop a number.
Lando, I think he had a really good drive, so I'm going to say like a 9.
And it doesn't have to be relative to the other drivers. It's just
No.
how they went. Yep,
9.
Lando a 9. Oscar,
10.
I mean, there's only one number. Yep, beautiful. 10. George, slithering into P2 again with no real fuss, and the butler taking out his garbage.
8.
Yep. Kimi?
Yeah, tough one. Really, really tough one. So I'm going to still say like a 7 because it was a unfortunate.
Pierre?
Does driver hatred come into it, or
No, it can't do. It's pure performance. Just
6.
a number. First number that comes to your head. Jack Doohan?
6.
As well?
Yep.
Leclerc?
7.
Hamilton?
8.
Alex?
7.
Carlos before he lost his pod?
Yeah, so I think this was the first race that I saw Carlos really starting to see the car. So I'm going to say like an 8.
Lance Stroll?
1. Is that negative numbers?
No, you can't do negative numbers because Lance can't count.
What?
Fernando?
Yeah, like 3.
Ollie?
Yeah, 10. What a drive.
Esteban Ocon?
Double points finish for Haas. Yeah, 7.
Still in the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship as well.
Oh, crazy.
Nico Hülkenberg?
I need to give him a big number, but it wasn't a good race.
It wasn't a great race from Nico.
5.
I think the hardest bit of racing he did was against Bortoletto at the start of the race. So no, that's just
and he came up second best.
he didn't win either. So Bortoletto,
6.
and then our mate Liam, go easy,
3.
and Isaac.
Yeah, no, so 7.
Isaac gets a 7 for pulling something out of the dust. So there you go. Let us know what you think in the comments about your results for the drivers. Reece is going to take a quick breath out of that one. We're going to switch across now and have a chat about Red Bull. Of course, we had hoped to stop talking about Red Bull quite so much during the show, but if you came here thinking that was actually going to happen, you are going to be gravely disappointed. So twice this weekend, it's a classic thing in sports, right? It happened to the Bulls. Actually, it didn't happen to the Bulls, but it happens to all of the top teams. Manchester United in the soccer, it's happened to them. Happened to Williams in Formula One, where you have so much success that at some point in time,
Hawthorn, Richmond in the AFL,
the West Coast in the sorry, mate.
Do they still play football?
Things start just to take a little bit of a turn. And you start to see uncharacteristic mistakes of the polished unit that you expect week in, week out. Red Bull had a technology failure in both of their pit stops, which
big time.
Cost them. It cost Max 2 seconds. I think it cost Yuki about the same. Where the automated system, so once the wheels are torqued on the car and they're all done, and the car is dropped, a light changes from red to amber to let them know the car's being dropped, and then they go. It stayed solid red, and then when they pulled out in the second stop, the supplementary one, like the reserve to say, hey, the other one's not working, it also didn't work.
Did it again.
And so they got left with 4 and 5 second pit stops, which in the world of Formula One is a huge disadvantage when everyone else, as I said, I think Ferrari did 2.1 seconds for their fastest pit stop of the weekend. So the wheels are really starting to come adrift. Red Bull, car-wise, are struggling big time. If you believe it, at Japan, the setup that Max drove with was made by one of his mates who's a sim racer. And then they get to Bahrain, and the car just brakes were struggling. Max said everything in the car was overheating, including himself. Yuki didn't say a lot, really, which doesn't surprise me because there's not a lot he can say when he's still adapting to the car and has a stronger result than he had in the prior weekend. But they're in big trouble. I mean, they've got obviously upgrades coming, like everybody does, but there is this looming at large, which will lead into our next conversation. Contract clause that Max has, which is a get out clause. If the performance in the car is not there by the
summer break,
by the summer break, then he can say, guys, at the end of the season, I'm out of here, adios. And that is a huge thing when you've effectively built your entire organization around one person. And that one person, I feel, I'm going to call it now, has already checked out.
Yeah. No, I think he has as well.
Not performance-wise,
no.
But I think I think Aston Martin, like we've spoken about at length, is the most logical option for him to pursue his outside Formula One interests. Certainly ahead of Mercedes, given that George, only has this year left on his contract.
Yep.
So it's just the wheels are just starting to come off. There's only so many times now Christian can come out and say, we're the best, all that other stuff that he usually comes out with, because it's just kind of not true now.
No, and talking about the wheels falling off and going back to the basic fundamentals, like the pit stop team is a team that's done a pit stop in zero gravity, pit stop in pitch black in the same or less time. I think they did zero gravity in less than 2 seconds, like a pit stop. So when you're having issues, when the time comes and you're having technical issues and wheels aren't coming off properly and lights are malfunctioning and you're doing 4 and 5 second pit stops, that's the sort of when you start to see everything falling apart and you're wondering what's happening in the background, the stuff that we don't see. So I'm wondering the dynamic of the team, is that losing? Because we've had obviously one of their key mechanics has left the team. Now he's still with Red Bull, but he's gone into a different role. I think he's in. He was one of the lead guys from the mechanics. I think he's gone into more of a advertisement role within the team. We've had
their chief strategist has gone to Sauber.
Yep, I was going to say he's gone to Sauber. We've had other people leave. Obviously, we've had Newey leave. So there's lots of things from designing the car to all down to like lead mechanics have left and gone to do different jobs or gone to do different teams. So obviously that dynamic that they've built over the years has gone. And I'm wondering if that is sort of the start of the team, sort of they're falling apart in the background because everyone's not working together as meshed as they were. And it's not a good time to come in and change that. Like we've seen it every, and you talk about the downfall of sports teams, but every time people do a reorder or they do remanagement, there's always that rebuild period. And when you're currently the world champion and you wanted to fight again for the world constructors, it's not the time to have this happen. And obviously they didn't choose for a lot of it to happen, but we're going to see that rebuild in a team that is, was expected to be, again, the fastest car. So,
yeah, so troubling times at Red Bull. I think good for the sport. I'm going to say it. As much as I've been a fan, and I am a fan of Max Verstappen, I still think it's good for the sport because of the competitiveness of it. I mean,
when you're not winning by 45 seconds every race, it does bring more fans in and more people around. And
to put it into stark contrast, there were issues electrically. There were issues with the Mercedes when George was in P2. The DRS opened itself, and they were able to work through that and solve it in control, which is.
Can we talk about the electronics faulting on George's car? George's car didn't even want to be in P2. Coming up P20 because his locator sensor on the car was malfunctioning. The timing tower from the FIA malfunctioned, and we lost that halfway through the race. So it was a pretty buggy sort of weekend.
Yeah, well, no, that was actually George had thought the race had finished and took the car off down into town to tell Mum about the results. So, but they obviously had electrical issues. But it's how you respond to them. And when you're not frantically trying to respond to fixing the car, it's a lot easier to manage those things against fixing the car, pit stop issues, etc., etc., etc. So, they're in. I think they're in big trouble. I haven't thought that until this weekend. I wasn't convinced about Japan. That it was an everlast sort of thing. But I think this weekend really showed that Red Bull have got the crumbling foundations of a dynasty on its way out.
I do wonder, talking about upgrades and improvements and things like that, I do wonder how much they kept from the car because they had it right. And it's just not the same improvement that we've seen on other cars because they weren't working as hard for as long on this car.
Well, I mean, look, taking what you're saying, let's flip it a different way. 2 years ago, the McLaren was a dog.
Yep.
Now it's not. Well, maybe it is, because apparently it is if you drive it. But what I'm trying to say is fortunes can turn that quickly. And let's remove, for the minute, the fact that Adrian Newey, and I'm going to say was, because there's an asterisk, because he's at Aston Martin now. We don't know. Was one of the best engineers of a generation across multiple
generations.
Well, no. So I mean, in terms of Formula One generations, across effectively 3 different types of Formula One cars. You've got the hybrid, you've got the pre-hybrid, and then you've got sort of the pre. It was not pre-downforce because they had wings and stuff, but pre-electronics. Because he brought that in. So we don't know that he's magically going to build an amazing car at Aston Martin. The probability's there, obviously, but we don't know he's going to do that, right? So, and obviously there's other great engineers out there, and he's never come out and said, I'm the best engineer in the world at all. But McLaren unlocked something in their car somehow, and there is every much the possibility of Red Bull being able to do that, with the caveat that they build the car around a driver that likes the car in a way that most other drivers can't drive. And that makes the window of performance so much narrower to achieve, for the engineers. So the chances of them turning it around, and even, let's be fair, wanting to do it, because next year the car changes. So why invest all this time and money into a lost cause this year? Yes, they get more money the higher they sit in the Constructors' Championship. They're going to struggle if Ferrari get their act together, which we think they will. Mercedes clearly got their act together. We could be looking at Red Bull in 4th or even 5th at the end of this Constructors' Championship. So, and that has a huge implication as well for them.
Well, just to put
in
it
terms of dollars,
just to put it in a little perspective, Haas has had more double point finishes this season than Red Bull Racing.
Yep. Ironically, they're still not the same number of points as Red Bull, which just shows you how much they're relying on Max.
Yep.
And so they've got to keep down this strategic pathway they're on until the end of the year. They have to.
And the last time Red Bull had as strong of 1-2 drivers as McLaren has was Max and Danny Rick.
Yes. Yeah, it was. So it was a long time ago. So speaking of which, let's lead into some more silly season stuff, because it does work off the back of potentially a letter of resignation or notice period being given to Max by Max, I should say, at halfway through the year. I saw Martin Brundle, who I have heaps of time for, as a Formula One pundit, come out and write an article saying that he might think that George may not be able to do enough this season to secure his seat for next season. And it's on the back of the fact that Max is available, and Max going to Mercedes, I think, is a long shot. But I think what the article was trying to suggest more was it's not a lay down misère that George is going to get another offer at Mercedes at the end of this year, particularly when you take into context how strong a start his teammate has had 5 races into his Formula One career.
Big time. And I'm glad that you said, obviously, again, a lot of time for Brundle as well, and his knowledge he would have forgotten more in a week than I would know about Formula One. So the fact that he's come out and said that just because Max is available, thinking into the logic of Ferrari getting rid of Sainz, who was a multiple race winner last season, he wasn't underperforming. They took the fights in McLaren for the Constructors' Championship and went with Lewis because of his experience, because of who he is. It would be the same thought process to going to Max over George.
Yeah, I don't know. You think back to other teams in the past, right? And so one that comes to mind is people probably never would have thought that Michael Schumacher would go from Ferrari to Mercedes. Now, I know he's German and he came back out of retirement, and so there's the connection there. Some people would have thought that Senna would have never gone from McLaren to Williams.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So, these things where there's the competition, and at the end of the day, if we really boiled it down, the issues that Toto might have with Max aren't actually of Max's doing. And I don't think they're probably real. I think Toto respects Max as a racing driver and how competitive he is, but he didn't make the decision that cost Lewis the championship. He got the win, and the FIA made the decision.
No, absolutely not. And again, coming from Toto, he's managing CEO of the race team and race director and things like that. So, a team principal. Sorry, Max is the goal. Like, someone like Max is the goal, and he came out and said that before they signed Kimi. He said, he was asked a question like, is Max available? And it's like, if Max was available, he would be having the conversation with Max. And we've touched base on this before as well. The more and more I think about this, Mercedes would be about the only team I could see Max stepping into out of Red Bull, because it's not in a rebuild phase. They know what they're doing. They've got a well-built car, obviously a performing car, a quick car. He's not having to go there and rebuild the entire team. The foundations are still there. They just might be missing a key piece. Whereas if he goes to Aston Martin, like was rumoured, he would need to rebuild the whole team on his back. And he would be working, I don't understand he'd be working with Newey, but he would have Stroll as his teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it does make a lot of sense.
You've got to think as well, Alonso is contracted at Aston Martin until the end of next year.
Correct.
Stroll, nobody really knows, all jokes aside, nobody really knows how long his contract's for, because you could see him having a role in that team beyond his driving contract. So no one really knows what he's doing. Hulkenberg, Bortoletto, they're going
26.
Audi for
Audi.
Hulkenberg 26.
Yep.
Bortoletto only this year. Gasly until at least the end of next year, but obviously no teammate confirmed. Williams is the one that's fixed, so both drivers there are there until the end of next year. Neither of the Racing Bulls confirmed, and both of Haas drivers are confirmed until the end of next year. And of course, we've got the addition of Cadillac. So there is open space for movements, but the most important thing as well is that neither of the Mercedes drivers are confirmed for next year.
Correct, yeah.
So you take it into consideration. Max gives his notice halfway through. 2 Red Bull seats open, 2 Mercedes seats open. Ferrari's fixed. McLaren is ostensibly fixed, albeit there'll be out clauses there, I'm sure, for Lando if he's not given preferential treatment if he's leading the World Championship. So they've got issues there.
That is something that we are going to keep an eye on for our listeners at home. That is definitely something that I feel like will start to come to a pointy end in the next couple of races, especially seeing, I think Oscar is only, is it 3 points behind Lando?
Yeah, he is.
In the constructors, in
the Drivers' World Championship.
Drivers' World Championship.
Yep.
So this week's race, after this week's race, I think that's going to come to a pointy end very quickly.
Yeah, so, the silly season, I've said it every time we've spoken about it. I can't believe we're talking about it this early in the season, but there's so much stuff to unwrap in terms of what can happen out of even halfway through this season. If Jack loses his seat, who goes in there? Does he get a drive next year? There's lots of great reserve drivers as well sitting around, including at Mercedes. So Mercedes got a vacant seat next year. There's the absolute Australian sitting there waiting, jogging on the spot, ready to jump in and get on board with that as well. So
imagine Max and Bottas running Mercedes.
It would be so good. So there's heaps of permutations, but I just thought it was an interesting piece from Brundle on that. Well, obviously we're going to keep, as you said, watching this space. We need to keep moving. Quickly segueing well into the Doohan files. So there is reports around that he is now safe until the summer break. That there is no Colapinto coming in to that car. And this is where, what's his name? It'll come to me, but the guy at Alpine, the consultant,
yep.
From Benetton days, he plays this game so well, and it's really, really hard to watch. But he's come out and said basically that the decision to replace Doohan, Flavio Briatore was his name.
Yep.
The decision to replace Doohan isn't solely based on results, because the driver in that car also needs to be able to hold the pressure and deal with the press and deal with the crowds. And so now, conveniently, because Jack is a mental giant and has managed to somehow not crack the shits and not lose his temper and not do any of that with all of the speculation around him, he's come out and said that to kind of support why Jack's still in the car, despite them doing everything they can to try and make sure, from the outside in, it looks like them doing everything they can to give him the least possible chance to succeed in that car.
Well, I did find it interesting in terms of timing, because it was it last week they had, was it last week or the week before, they had Colapinto testing the 2020 last week, the 2024
after the Japan race.
After the Japan race, they had Colapinto testing that car, and I wondered if his performance in the car, kind of like what we saw with Perez and Lawson and Ricciardo and things like that, I wonder if his performance in the car wasn't where they expected him to be, and that's why that's come out now. They've given him a chance and said, hey, look, if you can match these numbers or you can do this at this race, then cool, we'll talk some more. But if you can't, we'll talk later.
From some of what I saw, it was about that. Like, there's a little bit of, there's ongoing training and development with the driver, and, obviously that reads how it reads. So I'm glad to see it. I hope we actually see it. given that Fabio's come out and said that, I think that if Jack performs reasonably well over the next couple of races, then he'll be there, because it doesn't make sense to change him.
I mean, to be fair, I think Fabio needs to go, not Doohan.
Absolutely.
I'm still
the sooner that happens, the better. But so yeah, it's one of those things again. As we keep saying, we'll keep watching, but it looks like Jack Doohan is safe, and he did have an improved performance again. And I think that's all you can ask for, aside of the fact that he currently leads the Deconstructors Championship, which is the championship of how much money drivers have spent wrecking their cars. Melbourne hard because it was wet. And I think they should deduct the cost of the damage that he did in Japan off his car, because nobody helped him by telling him he couldn't go flat out into that turn. So there's some rookie mistakes from them as well, in terms of how they've contributed to him. But the thing that you would want to see as a team principal is gradual improvement, and I think he's giving them that. It was the first time that he had a real good shot at qualifying. He just missed out on getting into Q3. He's well within that sort of 1 second gap between him and his teammate, who has significantly more experience, not only in the car but in Formula
Just
One
in general. Yep.
So it's I think it's looking up, and I'm clearly a big fan and positive and all that about him.
I also just hope that they take a leaf out of Red Bull's. They learn from Red Bull. Don't take a leaf out of the book, but they learn from Red Bull and can see what all this external pressure can do to a driver. Because Lawson that is racing today isn't the Lawson we saw last year. And
not at all.
The only thing that has changed there is he had a few weeks in Red Bull. His confidence got absolutely demolished. He was absolutely ridiculed by the media, by people sitting behind their computers, by anyone that had anything to say about the Formula One, anyone that tried to stay relevant in the Formula One. He got demolished by them. And now we're still seeing him not perform like he was last season. So I hope that they realize, they go, hey, actually, these are rookies. They've made their break. They've done their hard yards. They've gotten to Formula One. Let's actually do some things to grow them, and not just, you can't do what we want to do after 2 races. See you later. We'll get someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I was concerned when Hadjar said that he would step up into the main Red Bull car.
We've said this before. Leave him alone.
But this is him saying it. He's like, "Oh, you'd be crazy to turn it down." I'm thinking,
you wouldn't. You'd be crazy to take it
up.
Do 2 seats. Sorry.
I was going to say, perform really, really well in the Racing Bulls, and then take up one of the other vacant seats.
Yeah, so it could go somewhere else.
Oh, dear. So I just wanted to get on my little rant box again in the Mike Crack segment.
Do you need this?
No, I need my protective corner. Can someone please tell Ralph Schumacher to shut the up? Like, he did not achieve anything in Formula One other than being the Formula One world champion's brother. Like, why it's like they thought, you know what? It's not bad enough that we got Jacques Villeneuve commentating periodically. And have you noticed?
How dare you swear at me like that?
Have you noticed he's like a mole? Like, he just randomly appears. He wasn't there at all last weekend. Hopefully he doesn't reappear this weekend.
To be fair, I did say people trying to stay relevant in Formula One, and that was directly pointed at Ralph Schumacher, who only has something to say when he can put his 2 cents in to go, oh, wait, Michael Schumacher had a brother.
It was like that time that Juan Pablo Montoya came out and said something and nobody cared about it because they couldn't translate what it is he said. But like, these people, these ex-Formula One almosts, have got no need to come out and say anything at all. And the papers that are asking them for comments, it's not even clickbait. It's worse than that. Like, it just is absolutely bottom ground zero. We've got a really limited Formula One coverage budget this year. Who can we get to say something stupid that will get people to open their files? And it was and Ralph's name came up.
But to be fair, in terms of a media outlet, if you didn't know Formula One and they just said Schumacher said this, they would be like, "Oh my god!" And then, it was Ralph.
This is true. So look, someone needs to get the message to him. If he wants to come on the podcast, we can politely decline. Because I'm not interested in anything he's got to say.
Well, Jackie Villeneuve actually emailed and said, "Can he come on?" And I just didn't respond. So
Yeah, no, definitely not. Absolutely not. So anyway, we move on. Standings after Bahrain. If I can work out how to do that, I certainly can. Let's get this happening. As I said, underdone this week, so I don't have my nice little graphics to look at. We're actually on the official Formula One because we need to give them credit. The official Formula One page here using their publicly available things, and we don't make any money off this, so please don't copyright us. We just didn't have time to prepare. So Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, 3 points difference, as you said.
Yep.
And I think Papaya rules are in big trouble this weekend. If Lando has another poorer weekend than probably he should. Or maybe we're doing disservice to Oscar in saying that. But if it's a 1-2 again and Oscar takes the lead in the World Championship, then it's going to be very interesting to see what clauses in his contract can get activated as we come towards the first round of upgrades.
Mark Webber will already be having conversations, I think.
But contractually, I'm sure there's rules around upgrades. Like who gets the upgrades first?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If Lando isn't leading the world title, does he get them? Just because he's the number one driver ostensibly?
I don't believe that even if Lando got the upgrades, Oscar wouldn't be able to outdrive him. Oscar's got the fight in the dog. He just has it.
And can we touch on something? I saw Dave Hughes came out and spoke about this as well. Sky need to get their act together. They didn't even cover the fact that Oscar won the race. Like there's literally Lando about to cross the finish line, and for the last bit of his lap, which is normal in the normal coverage, you go to the race leader, irrespective of what else is going on. They covered Oscar and George Russell, two Brits.
Lando and George Russell.
Lando and George Russell, like two Brits, and didn't even cover the race winner. Like if it was Max, they would cover it. Why aren't they covering bloody Oscar winning the race?
But anyway. If it was Max, they probably wouldn't, because as there's been a few interviews where it hasn't been any Brits on the podium, and the English reporters aren't there.
Just terrible coverage. So I think we're going to get that come to a climax this weekend. We'll see what happens there. Max in third. On 69 points. 69. George Russell on 63 points. That is the upset of the season so far for me. No one would have predicted that.
No. And the fact that, again, he doesn't appear anywhere. I think I saw him go off the track at a corner one time, and then it's like George Russell coming in second. I'm like, what happened?
He's crazily in the conversation to win the Drivers' World title. I know it's unlikely, but he's in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Leclerc in fifth with 32. Antonelli, he's going to easily be Rookie of the Season on 30. Hamilton, 25. Alexander Albon with Williams on 18. More points by himself than they got for the entirety of last year. And then you've got Esteban Ocon on 14. And Lance Stroll still hanging in there.
I love the fact I was a very big Haas fan, very, very big. What they do in Formula One, everything like that. I'm not an Esteban Ocon fan. I'm just not. But seeing Haas, they're coming fifth in the constructors. Ocon's up there in ninth. I think was it Bierman's in 13th. Seeing those two drivers up there is great for the team. Again, really, really big Haas fan, not a big Ocon fan. So I'll still follow them from afar.
Well, and how good is it that the spread of points this early in the season sees basically every team which sees every team have points.
Yep. Yeah, not everyone's got, even Sauber's got 6 team points, I think they do.
Yep. So it's really good. I mean, I think if we looked back on it on the last generation of car, that this probably happened in the last season as well.
It did, and last season the same sort of thing where there was multiple teams fighting for the championship at the end. It does come to that because everyone, obviously Red Bull got to their pinnacle much faster than everyone else, and then everyone catches up with upgrades and everything like that. So it has, I've gone back through and looked at it. It does historically happen, but it's a very exciting time to watch.
So this leads into Jeddah, which we've got this weekend, as we've already spoken about. Just to give you a refresher of last year's results, Red Bull 1-2 last year, Max Verstappen, and at the time, of course, was
Checo.
Checo Perez as well. Oscar finished 4th, which I think was his highest finish in his career to that
At
point
that
in
time.
time.
Yep.
And the Lando had started in 7th or 8th. The thing that was important was that one driver, Oliver Behrman, made his debut in the Ferrari and finished 7th ahead of Lando at this track. So why is that important? Well, because obviously, even though he's considered a rookie, he's raced here before and raced
in
well
the Formula One car
under pressure in a high-performing team.
Under pressure is the pressure the pressure he would have been feeling to get into. Because it was for Carlos Sainz, I believe, when he had his
for the appendix
out.
Yep. The weight loss program.
To get into that seat in that team at that time and perform the way he did was astronomical. And he just has such a boyish smile on his face all of the time.
Yep, absolutely. He loves the fact that he's in Formula One. And obviously a big point there, Oscar 4th, Lando finished in 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it could be another tough weekend. Obviously, we're not expecting Red Bull to perform as they did then. But I mean, look, who knows? Obviously, the car was strong then; it'll be strong again. Maybe this weekend the track will suit them a little bit better. But it's hard to tell now.
I remember from last year, the first half of the season was when they were saying their car was strong, and it was the tail end of the season that Max sort of started to drop off. He had a lot of penalties for engines and gearboxes and things that they were doing to the car, everything like that. So it's sort of in reverse. So I'm not hopeful that they're going to be. I think they're going to be very similar than this week in terms of time and where they are in starting and qualifying and everything like that. I think Oscar has a lot to prove this weekend. Not even to the team. He has a lot to prove to himself.
So leads into tips for the week. Surprise packet. Who is going to be the one that you're not expecting a lot out of? Who delivers, or vice versa?
Science.
You're expecting a lot or a little?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Like podium a lot or points a lot?
Top 6.
Top 6. That's a big call. That is a very, very, very big call.
I think seeing him coming around to the car, I think this weekend will be the weekend for it. If he doesn't end up with damage.
I'm not sure that it's a surprise packet if I say that I'm expecting to see Lewis Hamilton on the podium.
No, I think it is a surprise packet.
So that's going to be my call. Obviously, it's not because he has won a race in that car this year. It was a sprint race, so I don't sort of hold it with the same amount of cred as, a full Grand Prix race.
Yeah.
But
especially with his then result in the race being
what it
was.
I feel like he's on his way. I feel like he's coming. He's got it.
Do you think everything's? It sounded like everything lined up.
It did. It sounded like things were starting to click for him. So I'm gonna go with that. Biggest mover for the weekend.
Oh, I'll let you go first on this one. I'll just you on a little bit.
I haven't. It's a track where moves can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with Nico.
Just
because the guys at stake won't qualify very well, but we know they can put together a strategy to help sort of get somewhere. So I'm going to go with Nico this week to get some points.
They're going to have a lot to answer for this weekend as well. After obviously the off track. Well, he's going to have some issues with the off track, but they're going to have some strategic things as well with the car, with being too low and too much wear on the block. So you might be onto something there. I'm going to double up and just go Bierman.
Okay, yeah. So you're poor qualifying and he's going to get the result done?
Yep.
Okay. And I think it's your turn to go first for pole and winner.
Oscar.
Damn you.
Yeah, I think we're going to be on the same page today, but that's where I'm heading. I don't think Lando has, and I know that we probably give him a lot of slack. Lando's driving phenomenally, but I feel like he's still got that next step to take mentally under pressure in this sort of window, where I think Oscar's going to go, I need to show the team that I'm here and I'm going to be the number one driver.
Absolutely. I'm going to go with Max for pole, and because I can't go with Oscar, I'm going to go with Max for winning, just because Who knows? But if I go anything ridiculous like Leclerc, then I think I'm, that's probably the surprise packet call. So
yeah.
I just think at the moment we don't know enough about it, and I think that you're right. I think Oscar's going to be tough to beat again this week for Lando, and I just can't see Lando beating him.
Yep. And I would love to say George. I'd love to say
I was
that.
gonna say
Yeah,
George.
I'd love to say Russell
can't.
quality one and win things like that, but he doesn't have the emotional block that Oscar has. You see George get out of the car when he takes a podium and he's on top of the car and he's screaming and celebrating and having a jolly good time. Oscar got out of the car when he got pole, didn't stand on the car and do the usual celebration. He got out of the car, gave a thumbs up to the crowd and got weighed. That was his mental celebration, because when he's in that zone, he's in it. And it wasn't until afterwards you could see that he was that there was some happiness and enjoyment coming through his eyes and stuff like that.
But even when he's out of that zone, he's in it because he's still the same.
No, exactly right. But
he'd look the same if he went through a Macca's drive-through and they forgot to put in the sweet and sour sauce. Like
he'd just go back and go, "You forgot the sweet and sour sauce.
You forgot the sauce." Like he's just, and that's what makes him so good.
Yep.
So I mean, there it is. That's our predictions. Drop yours down in the comments below. And that gets us to the end of another action-packed episode of the Top Step. Looking forward to this weekend. They are the graveyard shifts for us. These races, they're 3 o'clock in the morning or some silly time. So hopefully you get up and watch it. But we'll be back with another pod early next week. Based on whatever craziness happens.
I'm excited.
At the Bahrain. It's not even at the Bahrain Grand Prix because that's where we were.
So we're going back in time at Jeddah.
We're going back in time at Jeddah. Let's see what happens. And then we do have a week gap until the next round after that. So as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Drop a like, drop a subscribe. We appreciate all the support that we've had. And until next time, this has been the Top Step with Reese and Stu, and we will see you next time.
Well, that's a checkered flag. We're at the end of the race. Thanks for tuning in. You kept up the pace. Reese and Stu are signing off today, but don't forget